Hello, this is the second of 5 videos about editing our own work. These videos are designed to help us see what's actually on the page and notice common errors and mistakes that we can then try to fix to polish up our own writing. Editing your own writing is not an easy thing to do, so I hope these videos give you some help. The text instructions that accompany this video will be linked in the description below. Let me share my screen with you. So what we're going to look at in this video is sentence variety. We're going to use the highlight tool in my word processing software. I'm working in Pages, but you can use the highlight tool in Word or in Google Docs to do the same thing. You're going to pick a paragraph from the body of your essay. So this should not be your introduction or conclusion, something in the middle of the essay, one of your body paragraphs. And in that paragraph, we are going to highlight all of the end punctuation. So I've already highlighted this first period. So when I say end punctuation, I mean any period, exclamation point, or question mark, anything that signals the end of a sentence. So, highlight, scanning for another one. Highlight. You can do this in your own paper while I'm working on it over here in my paper. Okay, so now that you've highlighted some things in this paper, I want you to zoom out your view a little bit and just look at the pattern of where the highlights are. So as you look at the highlights on my paper, you can see that they are fairly well distributed. Some of them are, some of the sentences are shorter, like this one in the middle of the paragraph. Some of the sentences are longer, like the next one after that short one. But most of them are a medium length. So this paragraph that you're seeing on my screen is an example of good sentence length and variety in the sentence length. If on your screen you are seeing a cluster of highlights where, for example, you have 3 or 4 marks of end punctuation in just a couple of lines, that should be a signal to you that your sentences are too short and choppy, and you can consider whether those sentences can be combined. The opposite of that might also be the case. If you notice that you have a span of text where you don't have any end punctuation at all, that might be a signal to you that you need to look at that more closely and maybe divide the sentence in half. So for example, this one in the middle of my paragraph, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 lines. This is a little bit long for me. And so I am taking another look at it, but I realized that part of the reason this is so long is that it's a direct quote, and long sentence style is part of the the common style in novels of the time period of the one that I'm talking about here in this essay. So I'm going to decide not to break this sentence into shorter pieces because the reason it's long is that quoted material. If it were just me writing, I would think twice about it and I would try to find a place to break that sentence up. So that's thinking about sentence length. What we're going for is a good mix of long and short sentences. Nothing, if we have too many really short sentences piled up, then our writing feels choppy and disconnected. If we have too many long sentences in a row, then our argument can sometimes be difficult to follow. The reader can get bogged down in those long sentences. So we want a variety of long and short. And that's pretty okay in this paragraph that I'm showing you on the screen. The next thing that we want to do, now that we have all this end punctuation highlighted, is we want to look at each point of end punctuation. We want to look at the thing right before it and the thing right after it. If you have a place where the words are the same, right? So this sentence ends with a description of the family. If I said here, the family is, that would be a signal that we could combine those two sentences. So take a moment and just look through your paragraph, whichever paragraph you're working with, where you've already highlighted these marks of end punctuation, and look at the words on either side of the end punctuation. If you ever find that you have the same word on either side of the end punctuation, that's a signal that maybe you can combine those sentences. That's not the case for me in this paragraph, so I'm going to leave it alone, but you can look again at yours and decide if you can combine any of your sentences. Okay, the last thing we want to do with these highlighted marks of end punctuation is we want to use them as a flag to help us look at the beginnings of our sentences. So I'm going to change highlighter colors. And I'm just going to highlight the beginning of each sentence in my paragraph. So another way that we think about sentence variety is we think about the variety of sentence structures that we can have. We don't want to have the same sentence structure over and over again. That when we do that, it creates sort of a sing-songy rhythm that gets hard to read after a while. It kind of tires the reader out. So the reader is more likely to keep reading and keep reading attentively if we give them a little bit of sentence variety. So one way we can check for that is we can look at how we're starting our sentences. So I highlighted the beginning of each of my sentences here, and I notice a couple of patterns. I have a couple of sentences that start with the quest of, and the family structures are reassembled, but the pieces that come next are quite different. So that's not too repetitive. Then I have a couple of these sentences that start with this. So here I've got this speech emphasizes, and here I've got this residue is sufficient. So in both of these cases, I'm using this plus a noun, this speech, this residue, to refer back to something that came from the previous sentence. I want to be careful about this. I only do it twice in this paragraph, so I'm going to leave it alone for now. But I want to make sure that I'm not doing it too much more. So twice is probably okay. The same is true here. I start two sentences with the name Reuben plus a verb. Reuben tells the messenger, Reuben goes on to say. One thing I've done well here is I have used two different verbs for reporting Reuben's speech, right? I didn't just say Reuben says in both places. But I want to make sure that I don't overwhelm the reader with this structure, right? This attributive tag to Reuben plus a quote. So on the whole, I am feeling pretty confident that this paragraph has good variety in terms of sentence structure as well as sentence length. So I am going to leave these alone for now. But you can take a close look at your paragraph. If you notice that you have a bunch of sentences that start the same way, consider whether you can revise any of them, whether you can say it in a different way in order to bring in some variety in your sentence structure. After you've looked at one paragraph with this particular video, you can move on to the next video in the series. If this felt like a useful activity to you, you might take some time later on to apply this technique to your whole paper draft.